All right, we're talking today about X and Y intercepts. So when you think of an intercept, normally I think of interception from football, so that would be when, technically when a defensive player's path intersects with a offensive player's path and they get the ball instead. So when we're talking about intercepts, this is just where the graph of the line, whatever line you're graphing, crosses the x-axis and the y-axis. So be where the graph crosses the x and y-axis. So wherever it crosses the x and y axis is where our intercepts are going to be. So the way that we find those intercepts is if we've got a graph, then wherever that graph crosses would just be our intercept points. So if we know this is the y-axis, this is the x-axis, my y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis, and my x-intercept is where it crosses the x-axis. So you can also think about those as being, on the y-intercept, that's where x is equal to 0. So if we think of that being a positive 1, negative 1 for x, 0 is right there in the middle. So when we start looking down here at tables and the graphs and all of that, then it's where this is where it's equal to 0 for the x when you're looking at the y-intercept, or for the y when you're looking at the x-intercept. So looking at our graph over here, when I look for the x-intercept, you'll also hear that referred to as a 0. So that's when the formula itself is equal to 0. So on a graph, though, we can just look right here, and so I know that the x value is 1, 2, 3, 4, and the y value is 0. So that would be our ordered pair, or we can just write it as a 4. Then the y-intercept, where it crosses the y-axis, so x would be 0, the y-axis would be 2. And you could just write that ordered pair as 0, 2. Remember that when we're checking those, it's rise over run as we're going over. So the x value would be my run, and my y value would be my rise when we're looking at those ordered pairs. Okay, next, when I'm finding the intercepts from a table. So when I've got a table, if I can, I'm going to find it just like we said, the x-intercept is going to be some number, and y is going to equal to 0. And for the y-intercept, it's going to be x as 0, and then y will be a number. So finding those, when x is 0, that's my y-intercept, and when y is 0, there's my x-intercept. So my x-intercept would be a negative 2, and y-intercept would be 4. Okay, last, what we're going to see, and what you'll probably see most often, is when you have a formula. So to get my y-intercept is the easiest one when we've got the slope-intercept formula, which would be y equals mx plus b. The b would be my y-intercept. So looking over here, I know right off the bat that my y-intercept, where it crosses the y-axis, is 3. Now the last thing I've got to do to figure out my x-intercept, I can either take it and graph it and see where it crosses, or I can say, well, I have my formula here, and I know that for my x-intercept, y is going to equal to 0. So if I take this and set it equal to 0, then it would be 0 equals negative 3 over 2x plus 3, and I could solve that out. So I have negative 3 equals negative 3 over 2x. If I multiply that by the reciprocal, then I end up with that canceling out, my negatives and my 3's canceling out, and my x-intercept equaling to 2. And we'll do that with some other formulas, but you've always got the option of taking it and putting it up on the graph. So let's say I use my graph right here. If I know my y-intercept was equal to 3, and it goes down 3 over 2, then it literally just hits right off the bat. And so sometimes that works out a little easier for you, other times it doesn't. But that is also an option that you have for finding those intercepts.